Welcome to AI Behind the Screens. My name is Vilde, and I lead the transformation of our product development with AI at Vend. And we've covered our general approach to AI in our previous episodes. But today we're going to go behind the screens of AI tooling and strategy with our VP of AI. So welcome, Andreas.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So Vend has been very tooling forward in our approach. And at least from my perspective, it started early on with ChatGPT Enterprise and rolling that out to the entire company in 2024, I think. Can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, it's a while ago, so let me try to recollect it. But what we were kind of excited by LLMs and GPTs early, and when ChatGPT was launched, we had a lot of people in the organization who were really keen on using it, and we had a small team of extremely excited people. And so we just felt that this was a bit similar to when the iPhone was released. It's a completely new type of tool. We were unsure about how it would be used and what it would be useful for, but we were convinced that it was going to be a radically new thing. And so we really wanted the whole organization to experience that tool. One, because we thought it would be important for us as a working tool, but secondly, because we thought that understanding how that tool works or how that thing works will be very important for our products also going forward. So that was really the background to the decision. And then we were able to convince, and we had really forward-leaning leadership who we were able to convince that we should give this tool to everyone. It's not a tool that is going to be used by a special group or anything. It's something that is important for everyone to use. So that was really the background to signing the enterprise agreement and deciding to rolling out ChatGPT to everyone.
Mm-hmm. And as part of that, we had a program to teach people to use it.
Yes. So we needed to make sure that people started using it and using it in the right way. So we had a program for everyone. Every employee, all employees in Vend had to take this training. That was a two-part training. One was a more generic training on how to prompt and what you can do and what you can't do. And the other part was more specific around use cases and roles. So we pushed that really hard during the whole year and actually had management incentives on completion of that training. So we reached above 80% of the employees participated in the training. And I think that was quite important. It's not just getting the tool, it's actually using it in your daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree. And something that it's a while ago, so I don't know if you remember, but a part of our approach is also making sure that we have a lot of usage, but that it's official or not shadow AI usage. And you coined this term, we don't want secret cyborgs.
Yes, I didn't coin it because it's coined by Ethan Mollick, I think,
okay.
who's a professor at Wharton, and who's a great person to follow if you don't. But he, at least that's what I learned, the phrase secret cyborg. So what that means is people using AI tools in secrecy. So they become cyborg or cybernetic. They can become kind of augmented or enabled, but they do this in secret, meaning that they don't tell their manager that they can work twice as fast, or they don't share with their colleagues all the tips and tricks that they have learned. So you create, you don't really get organizational learning, you get individual learning. And I think that was very important, still is very important, that we build competency and skills in public so that it can come, so that it can gain everyone in the company.
Mm-hmm. And now it's been about 2 years since the big push for ChatGPT Enterprise started, but
Yes.
We're not really pushing that anymore. So what has changed in our portfolio?
I think the main thing is that we have learned and we have realized that we cannot push one tool only. Instead, we are saying now that we want to have a portfolio of tools. So the best tool for each job is more important. And when we took that decision, then ChatGPT became one amongst many, and that's really the reason. So some people still use it, some people don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and can you walk us through what that portfolio of tools is at the moment?
Yeah, so we're still on ChatGPT Enterprise. We have people using that. We have everyone is on Gemini. So we have Google Workspace as our internal tooling for mail and calendar and so on. So that means we have Gemini for everyone. And then we have Claude by Anthropic that we're also rolling out. So to kind of split it into what we're using it for, ChatGPT is mainly used. There are some people who simply love ChatGPT and they use ChatGPT, but we also think it's very important if you work in business development, product management, or strategy to stay on top of development in that tool. They have a very large user base, and we need to just stay on top of what's happening in that world. So that's why it's important for those folks who works in product development and business development. And then we really see Gemini as the workhorse for office work for individuals. So connecting with your calendar, connecting with your email, helping you in those tools. It's a very capable tool for doing research and connecting to the internet and all these things. But we see it more as an individual tool. And then when it comes to Anthropic and Claude, I think there are probably two main groups of users. One is product development and maybe specifically engineering, where many people are really deeply invested in Claude Code. I should say that it's not the clean cut because some of our engineers prefer Codex, and that's also we can also use that. But the second thing is we use Claude Cowork and Claude Code as tools for team augmentation. So not only augmenting yourself as an individual employee or professional, but treating AI as a tool for the team or as a part of the team. And there we have very exciting early signals using Cowork and Claude Code. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's been a good effort, but also can be a bit tricky to try to provide the best tools out there for everyone who has different needs and different use cases that they want to work on. And how do we manage to balance those needs?
We have been. I was a bit concerned about that too, honestly. And a while ago, we set up this kind of how can you get the tool to be approved by privacy and security, and because those aspects are of course very important for us, data residency and all these questions. And we set up a process for that where we said that okay, if you want to try a new tool, it needs to fulfill some basic requirements, but apart from that, just generate a group of excited employees around you that you can look at this tool and evaluate it and see that it provides value. And when you've proven that, we can take a discussion on whether we should include it or not. And the interesting thing is that it's not the fear of it being a wave or a tsunami of millions of tools that hasn't really materialized. It's a few tools, and we are. So it's been very manageable, and I think people are more interested in, or our employees at least, are more interested in learning how to use a tool well and getting support on that. That has been more important than selecting a specific tool. So once a tool like Claude Code gets the stamp of this is a very cool and productive tool, then it spreads by itself more or less, and I shouldn't say we let it happen, but we have a governance board that takes that into account.
Mm-hmm. I think something that's also interesting about our approach that might differ from some other companies that I meet through my network, and that's that we don't focus that much on limiting the cost of trying AI tools. So the data residency is very important, and working with trustworthy companies is something and we always want an enterprise deal. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I think for the record, we care about cost, but we think we're in a phase now where adoption and learning is at least as important as cost. So we keep an eye on the cost, but it's not. We wouldn't restrict our employees from using tools for cost reasons within relative boundaries. But back to your question, I think I've thought a lot about this, and I think it partly this has to do with our history as a company. So before we became Vend, we were Schibsted, and there was a strong tradition of democracy and openness, and people joined this company for these maybe altruistic reasons. In Vend, we have many people who are really who really care about sustainability, about climate, about secondhand trade. Many people join this company for that specific reason. And coming from a publishing background and coming from the sustainability background and being a friendly tech giant takes responsibility. Questions like data residency, questions like how dependent are we on US providers, it's an ongoing discussion in Vend, and I think that kind of colors the way we think about what to choose and what not to choose.
Mm-hmm. Something cool about you is that you're a bit into history.
Yes.
And we've talked before about what parallels we can draw to the period that we're going through now.
Yeah.
What do you think are some interesting ones?
Yeah. So my favorite parallel, and this really goes back to when we started exploring large language models, which was before the split from Schibsted. So the newspapers and the journalists was a super important stakeholder group for us, and we usually talked about LLMs and compared them to the printing press. So the Gutenberg printing press, and the reason we talked about that was because that was also a very fundamental shift in how knowledge is stored and distributed, and how you can work with knowledge. Before that, almost every at least in Western Europe, knowledge was written down by hand, and it was really expensive. It was hard to copy, but when the printing press emerged, that was a cheap way to reproduce the written word, and that actually had some very large impact on society in Europe. For example, it became important to have a shared language. So grammar became aligned in countries of basically how you wrote, how you talked became, suddenly we had these nation languages. It's a bit simplified, but it was really accelerated by the fact that you could all of these copies of these texts were there. So that's quite important. It also obviously had a large impact on education and who could read these things, and how could then ideas spread across Western Europe. It was not just isolated to certain groups with maybe their own motives, like the church or like the ruling classes. So I think it's on that scale anyway. This revolution with generative AI.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I think a much smaller effect that I read about is that the people who were printing books before the printing press, at least a lot of them, according to this article, they enjoyed when the printing press appeared, because it allowed them. Most of them were interested in doing the illustrations in the books, and they still had to do those by hand. So the fact that they were able to automate the printing of all the words and spend all of their time on what they are really interested in. And I think it's a much smaller scale, but a parallel to what some professions are going through.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think because I think that we sometimes tend to make the mistake of talking about what will this new technology or this new tool do to the profession of being a software developer, or to the profession of being a product manager, and so on. And I actually think that we need to talk about that much more on an individual level. And one reason for that is that if you think about what motivates software developer, as an example, I'm a developer myself long ago, so I can relate a little bit. You can think about people who are really interested in building products and having an impact in the market. I usually call this, look, mom, I built this. That's the motivation. You can show your friends or your family or that you built a product and it works and people love it. And if that's your motivation, getting superpowered by AI is, of course, great. You can build 5 products instead of 1. But there are other developers who are more motivated by, let's call it the craft. So writing elegant code, producing the perfect algorithm, the craftsmanship of the trade-offs in engineering. And it might be less easy for them, I think, because an AI can do many of those things, or it can make those things less attractive in the grand scheme of things. So I think we make a mistake here when we say for this role it means this. I think it's much more about for this individual it means something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's now I'm going to talk about the role, but among our software engineering community, at least, I would say in the fall, we had a bit of maybe a crisis of identity where people were struggling with, especially the people who are more into the craftsmanship and setting up the system side. We're not sure how their interest would fit in. I think even though there's still some people who feel that way, I think that that's subsided a bit. Because it's much easier for people to see now, okay, this is still engineering and I'm still doing the same stuff, but just with the different interface. And maybe some of the other functions are still going through that or haven't found their new interface yet.
No, I think that's true. I think I love this old quote by Sam Altman. He was on Lex Fridman podcast, and it's long ago now, but he basically said, I think there's going to be a lot more code. And I really think so. There's going to be a lot more code, so you shouldn't be worried too much if you're a software developer. But I also think that those craftsmen or kind of systems-focused people, their skills are really needed in building the infrastructure needed to make augmented software development really, really work. That's their type of problem more. So there's really a role for them, and that role will expand, I predict, that will expand outside of software engineering. People working in finance will need that skill. People working with people or HR will need that skill. And so there will be a lot more software or system software developers inside those functions, I think.
Mm-hmm. Let's zoom out a bit to where this is heading and maybe talk a bit about the human side. We've started recently talking about an AI native organization and what that means.
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes, it's a speculation, of course. I know as little about the future as the next person, but I do believe that there will be some work that will be almost entirely done by the machine. More work than today is done by the machine, or more knowledge work than today is done will be done by the machine. So execution and kind of read-only tasks and these kind of things, I think that will be done by the machine. The human will be working more on taking decisions, showing judgment, teaching the AI, and then of course there will be many roles that are kind of a hybrid. So that's high level and fluffy. But if we think a bit more about what capabilities will be important in that future organization, I think the ability to be explicit about what work a human needs to do and what work an AI can do, and being able to, so to speak, delegate the proper tasks to the AI. That role or that ability will be very important. It's quite similar to being a traditional manager, actually, dividing work into good side pieces and decide who should solve each piece and delegate that explicitly. So that I think is going to be very important. The second thing is that knowledge that isn't documented or written down is not available for the AIs or the agents to read. So being able to codify or write down your knowledge, your processes, what matters and what doesn't, that ability is going to be very important. And I think we will see many companies working much more deliberately with codifying or documenting their knowledge. So then if you imagine that you have 5 or 10 or 15 agents per employee that are doing a lot of work, and they are working around the clock, and they're working on machine speed, you need to have a system in place, or you need to have governance in place that works in that kind of at runtime speed. So you need to be able, you have to delegate the proper jobs, but you also need to be able to say, okay, now the quality is drifting, or now now these agents are risking to make the wrong decisions. So you really need to have that control mechanism in the infrastructure. And the last thing is that learning will become much more important, or even more important, faster than it is today. So deployment is just the start, and continuous organizational learning in the traditional sense, but also in the kind of infrastructure, knowledge, and process sense is going to be very important.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say in the beginning when you're starting to work in a new way, okay, yeah, of course you're responsible, but you watch everything that the AI does. But I think the manager metaphor is very interesting in that managers, at least not in trust-based organizations like we have in the Nordics, they don't watch everything that's being done, right? There's an escalation path and there's some way to override when things go wrong, but there's also a fair bit of decision-making that's been delegated into the teams.
Yeah, and I think we will probably see as maybe a non-Nordic, but a kind of the path that you would think about with a new coworker or a new employee. Like your level of autonomy will increase over time. You earn that trust. If the agent or the AI system consistently shows that it takes the right decision, you will be less worried, so to speak. So it can become more and more autonomous over time. Some systems won't, then you have to change, iterate, or shut down.
Something, an observation we saw from one of the other episodes was when it comes to our products, if we have AI forward products, people actually volunteer quite a lot of information about themselves and delegate much more easily than we expected to the AI. Do you think the same thing might happen at work?
Yes, I think so. Many people are lazy, so it's very easy, and I think we also see some signals there. It's easy to kind of hand over your thinking to the AI, and I'm not sure that it's entirely a good thing. Actually, I think we need to retain the accountability for the decisions and the background to our decisions. So yes, I see that as a potential benefit, but also a bit like a risk, actually.
We've talked about some other risks of this, especially on the human side. So you've mentioned something called the buy-in trap.
Yeah, this is because AI is such a powerful thinker and such a powerful sparring partner. There is this risk that you spend too much time with the AI and too little time with your coworkers, and I think we suddenly have this opportunity to build a waterproof recommendation, and you can make a write-up for a decision or for a direction, and the AI can help you to kind of close every logical door in that write-up. So every question or every doubt that potentially could come in is already kind of handled and shut down. And that's good because the material and decision is probably very good, but part of part of involving your colleagues early in the early thought thoughts, when it's messy and inconsistent and strange, is that you actually get involvement and you get buy-in. And that's still very important when you work in a company with other humans. And I think it's we need to learn to be deliberate in where do you engage your coworkers and where don't you do that. We have some experience. Me and two other colleagues were tasked to write a speculative narrative about the future of work, and we worked in isolation, three of us, and we came up with three really good suggestions. But then we took them together with an AI and like used that as the input and asked it to find holes and to compare and contrast. And what came out at the other end was much better, but we all three of us kind of bought it. So I think you need to be deliberate about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're designing our meeting points much more deliberately, both at work, but also in terms of socializing and being in the office and meeting coworkers in a more human way.
Yeah. So that's also that's very interesting. We look at the most advanced augmented teams in Vend. They have shifted the way they work. They specifically talk in a certain way in meetings because they want the transcriptions to be well understood. They need to document in different ways, and it's a bit of an in-joke, but the talk we have around the water cooler at the coffee machine is becoming less important because the AI won't capture it, because you have to go back to your desk and then write it down in order for the AI to have that context. But I think this ability that we have to work to produce high quality just in your own isolated bubble, and the fact that we always talk when like an AI is in the room and you have to stay on point, it also has some risk for the human side. And I kind of think a bit in the same way as we did in the pandemic, when everyone had to go home and we couldn't meet each other. We only met on video. It was important for us then to be disciplined around the human element and having meetings we actually scheduled meetings that were only about talking about relationships and talking about what happened outside of work, to not lose that connection. And I think we're entering a similar phase now. We see that the upside, the upside of being connected and being on video is really high when it comes to the actual work, because then the AI can be there to help you. But we can't forget. I think we can't forget the kind of human element and the relations and the office talk. So we need to maybe redesign how we think about the workplace.
Yeah, for trust, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we've made any mistakes?
Many mistakes. A lot of mistakes. We tried to measure the wrong things in the beginning. That's clearly a mistake. We were early on really set on measuring how many hours can we save, or how much financial impact will this have, and because of the fact that this was so emerging and we didn't really know what the tooling could do, we spent a lot of time there that we could have spent on learning, and I think that's a big mistake. Another mistake that we have made is to actually to underestimate the human element, and that is that you touched upon the engineers and the kind of a bit of soul searching there, but we've also seen this when we've approached leaders saying, okay, here's a process. It takes 15 clicks in some system, and it covers these 3 teams. And by the way, we can probably automate it with AI. And it's that's very rational. But for the leader, what is inside the person's head is, okay, this is half of my job is going away. I don't want this. This is the wrong thing. So I think we stumbled a bit on how we've kind of phrased this towards leaders and employees.
Yeah, something around that came up in our first episode was individual adoption it's still hard, but it's it's just you and the computer. And then when we move to the team level, it's significantly much harder, I think.
Yes, definitely, and it's probably going to be even harder when we talk about cross team or org level.
Mm-hmm.
It's also big. I mean, it's these very human things. What kind of role do you have in a team meeting? Are you the rational one? Are you the note taker? Are you the jester? Are you the person who always makes everyone laugh? Or some of these roles will be super powered, and some of them may become more or less redundant. So it's also about who you are in the team will be impacted differently on an individual level.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone were to become a VP of AI at another company?
I think don't forget to be on the frontier. We say lead from the front a lot, and I think it's important to stay on top of what's happening out there. So that's really my advice. It's important to not lose the ability to talk to the individual employee. A lot of our best work happens on the individual employee level, and my personal preference makes me read a lot of technology white papers, so like scientific papers on AI. But you could also kind of just follow the thought leaders on ways of working. I mentioned Ethan Mollick, he's one. Kapathy, there are many others. So just I think it's important to stay connected to the front.
Mm-hmm. So you used to be a CTO of a much bigger department, and now you've chosen to be in this very cool but smaller area. And what keeps you in that type of role?
One thing is that it's the impact is outsized. So our department has an outsized impact. Given how many we are and what we achieve, we really make an impact. So that's of course one thing, and the other thing is that I'm personally really, and I have been for my whole career actually, I'm really excited about the intersection between technology and society and business, and being in a role like I usually say that it's a privilege. I was there when the internet arrived. I'm old enough to be there when the internet arrived, and now I get the opportunity to kind of live through this, which is as big or bigger, another kind of these shifts, and I have a job where I can actually spend time on reading white papers. Not all my time, but some of my time, and I think it's such a privilege to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you so much, Andreas. What I'm taking from this is we've gone from a single tool to a broader portfolio. We're moving up from individual to team and even AI native organizations. And we have some interesting history parallels that we can talk about. And you have one of the coolest jobs around. Thank you for taking us behind the screens of AI tooling and strategy.
Thank you, Vilde. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.